Hello chess friends and welcome to Azad of Chess channel and welcome back to our little computer chess world. Welcome to a beautiful gameplay by Stockfish 16 against another top engine Altair in a great Philidor Defense. And I'm going to cover a Philidor game today because I recently lost a game with the white pieces against the Philidor Defense and I was very frustrated because I never thought that the Philidor is sort of a good opening. White is basically gaining many spaces, get also very early kingside flank attack, but I lost the game, and that's why, as I said, I simply had to improve my theory of the Philidor Defense, and I downloaded many great games in AI chess in the Philidor Defense, of course, especially the games in which white won, and I found really great gameplay by Stockfish against Altair, in which we'll see, I think, the most important strategic elements of the Philidor Defense, especially, as I said, from white's perspective, but also cool tactics, immortal, very wild tactical sequences. So if you're bothered like I am to play against the Philidor Defense, check out this game. I think this is really a beautiful performance again by Stockfish 16. So let's see now what happened with the white pieces. The fish open with move e4. We have e5 by Altair, knight to f3, d6 the Philidor, d4, e takes d4, knight takes d4 is now the exchange variation of the Philidor Defense. Knight to f6, knight to c3, bishop to e7. And what bothers me always about the Philidor Defense with the black pieces, you see the bishop on e7 is not a good piece. It's simply really neutralized by its own pawn, and there is also a strategic disadvantage. There is now this weakness on d5 that could be occupied in the later stage of the game. In order maybe to somehow protect the d5 square, you have to play in one moment c6, but if you play that, then of course the d6 pawn is weak. So there are many strategic disadvantages, but the cool part actually for black is that black is here a 4 versus 3 pawn majority, and that's something that black is relying on when black is playing the Philidor Defense. Black was trying a6, b5, c5, maybe even c4, b4, and then launch simply a queenside flank attack. That's, I think, the basic strategic concept, the basic strategic goal of black. So now here Stockfish continues, I think, with the best way, bishop to f4, simply anticipating the possibility of blacks to play the move c6. If that happens, of course, as we said, we maybe play knight to b3, queen to d2, queenside castling, and then you have a clear attack against the d6 weakness. So we have now castling by Altair, queen to d2 by the fish, preparing now immediately queenside castling. Knight to c6, castling by the fish, knight takes d4, and now queen takes d4. Bishop to e6, Altair is of course supporting the potential queenside flank attack, and what the cool part about this game is, and many times you see also the Philidor exchange variation exactly in the same position, is that we have now again the so-called opposite side attack game. Kings are on opposite sides, and who is faster on the attack will eventually win the game. And when I also looked at the database on Lichess and also in the GM database, there are many winning games by black. Magnus Carlsen, for instance, won one game against Dominguez Pillars Liner. Also, Magnus Carlsen lost with the white pieces against Shakir Mamedjadov. So Shak destroyed with the Philidor Defense Magnus Carlsen in 2012. There is also a beautiful game, Sergei Karyakin against Magnus Carlsen, in which Sergei Karyakin destroyed then Magnus Carlsen's Philidor Defense. So many great games, but you see also black is many times winning the game, although I still kind of feel that the Philidor Defense is not the optimal defense against e4 or maybe against d4. So here after bishop to e6, we have now the move f3 by the fish, preparing now the move g4, immediately kingside flank attack. Of course, Altair is doing the same, a6, b5, maybe later c5, b4 and similar stuff. g4 by the fish, b5, h4, simply continuing the pressure. We have now c5, queen to e3, b4, hitting even the knight, knight to a4. The threat is, of course, knight takes c5. The queen is lined up against the rook on the d file. There are now some tensions on the d file. Knight to c5, huge threat. So that's why queen to c7 here by Altair. g5. This becomes now a theoretical novelty, a completely new move that we see now in the game. In chess history, b3 has been played, anticipating also the possibility of the move c4 here by black. So the g5 is, of course, very good, and basically black has now two choices, knight to d7 or knight to h5. I myself, that's just my opinion. That's not something that I've studied deeper or something, but from a human point of view, I think knight to h5 is much better maybe than this move that here Altair played knight to d7. Knight to h5 stops immediately the potential progress of white with the move h5. White is trying, of course, to play h5, maybe g6, h6 afterwards to somehow just split the pawn chain in front of black's king, somehow getting this pawns out in front of black's king, opening up the g file, opening up the h file, and simply put more pressure against the castle king here on the king side. So after knight to h5, probably white would then continue with bishop to h2, rook from f to e8, and then b3. Even if you play something like b3, then you have this resource, g6, and if, for instance, f4, bishop to e2 happens, maybe to attack the knight, you still have access to the g7 square you can escape with your knight. So it seems more logical to me. As I said, this is not something that I studied deeper or something. It's just my opinion. Here in the game, Altair played now the move knight to d7, but it gives here immediately the fish the opportunity to put more pressure simply on the king side, to simply continue to push the pawns here on this side of the board. So we have now the move a5, h6. You see, white is already there. We have this race situation, this opposite side attack game. So as I mentioned, who is faster on the attack will have greater chances to win the game. And black never really exposed so far white's defense by pushing the pawns. White is already here with the move h6 and forces basically some structural weaknesses here after move g6, g7 weak, f6 weak. So now huge positional problems in black's camp. So we have now finally b3, knight to e5 by Altair, and now bishop to e3, bishop to g3, preparing now the move f4, and maybe if possible even to break and enter in the center with the move e5. We have c4 by Altair, rook, king to b1, getting out of this potential rook and queen attack on the c file later. We have now rook from a to c8. Of course, Altair is preparing now dangerous stuff here around the square c2. So that's why Stockfish simply protects the c2 square by placing the rook on d2. We have now the move f6. Here Altair is trying somehow to dismantle, to destroy this space advantage on the king side that white has created. And now we have g takes f6, bishop to f6. You see, Altair is also playing a great game. We have now good diagonal for the dark square bishop. Black has also advanced the pawns here. The knight is centralized. So as I said, maybe it was still a good idea when Altair rerouted the knight. Now the knight at least is participating in the attack, is now centralized. So good also strategies here so far by black. But Stockfish continues with bishop to e2. Again, wants to prepare this move f4. We have now knight to f7. Here Altair is simply protecting the d6 square. If you try, for instance, something like a rook to e8, then there is another problem in black's camp which cannot be seen maybe immediately, but knight to b6 is very dangerous because of knight takes c4, knight takes c4, bishop to c4, bishop to c4, and now bishop to d6. You see, this pawn is lost, so then we take out the pawn. So good position, I would say, here for white. Also the rook is hanging, so not a good continuation for black. So knight to b6 is a theme that you see now is present in a couple more moves. Knight to b6 is sort of a liberating move for white. Knight to b6, and even if necessary, to jump with the knight on a beautiful square on d5. We have now rook from h to d1, knight to f7, rook from h to d1. Here you cannot play knight to b6 now immediately, because then c takes b3 is going to happen. You can maybe pick up the rook, but then this one is, for instance, also very cool. You get even checkmated here by the beautiful activity. You have to step back, then the queen is going to promote it. So game over here for white. So white has to be also careful. So that's why Stockfish first regroups, gets the pieces on the most active squares, is not rushing with this potential knight to b6 move. We have now a rook from f to d8. We have now the move f4, rook to e8, and now queen to f2, getting out of this e-file mess. Of course, not immediately, but if something clears on the e-file, the queen could be endangered here on e3. C takes b3, we have a takes b3, and now comes bishop to c3. Altair hits simply the rook on d2, and now the real fun starts. Stockfish says, okay, take the rook, but I'm going to attack now the king again. Stockfish is offering the exchange sacrifice, but says here, just take it. You have again dark square problems, you have again an exposed king. My bishops are coming into the game for sure. Although it seems quite natural what the fish is doing, again, I'm asking myself the question, how many humans would dare to play this line, because you have to now see everything from this point on. And of course, Altair accepts the challenge. Bishop to d2. Stockfish takes. Rook takes d2. What should you do? If you, for instance, try bishop to d7 to attack the knight, again, this motif that we have talked about. Knight to b6, you have to step back. For instance, here we play queen to d4, even with checkmate threat, so again, a messed up position. After move knight to b6, you could maybe try queen to c3, attack the rook, but now bishop to e1 again would solve all of the position problems. We take out the rook, and now with this situation where black is again facing many dark square problems, I think white is completely winning the game here. So that's why after rook to d2, queen to e7, Altair is trying to get the queen finally here in order to defend the dark squares. We have now bishop to d3, knight to h6, so Altair takes even this pawn. Seems logical, of course, but now Stockfish shows its mean plan. It's actually to move f5, and the position, I would say, from this point on is collapsing for black. It becomes simply a one-way ticket in white's favor. So we have here queen to g5. You cannot take, of course, g takes f5, then you get this one, bishop to h4. You could maybe cover. Rook comes into the game. Look at this. The rook that was actually the defender becomes now the best attacker. You're trying maybe knight to g4. We take out this pawn, you retreat, the rook takes g4, and game over again here for black. So after move f5, that's why here queen to g5 by Altair, rook to g2 again. Again, the queen and the king are lined up here on the g file. We have now knight to f5. Altair has to give up some material. We have now e takes f5. You could maybe try here, instead of knight to f5, to get the king out of this g file mess, but actually it's not working because of bishop to f2. The queen drops back. Bishop to d4. You have to go with your king here, and again, you're losing the battle, the tactical battle here on the g file. Again, you're getting decoyed, of course, towards the g file. So that's why for rook to g2, knight to f5, e takes f5, bishop to f5, bishop to e5, indirectly discovered attack here by Stockfish against the queen, queen to d8, bishop to f5. We have now rook to e5, and now bishop to c8. A really brutal tactical sequence here by Stockfish. Of course, queen to c8 by Altair, and you see now Altair has still 5 pawns on the board. Stockfish has only 2 pawns, has of course the piece. It's still far away from win. Many of us would mess this up with the white pieces for sure, but Stockfish is calculating everything in the correct way. Stockfish says first, I'm going to include my queen into the game. So here Altair delivers a check. The second rank is still covered, so no worries there. So that's why for queen to e6, knight to b2, h5, of course, Altair is pushing the pawns. But when you push the pawns, of course, here, then you expose your king more and more. So that's, I think, the issue. If this pawns would be somewhere else, if maybe the king would be secured and the passage would be somewhere here on the queen side, it would be a different story. But now, as I said, you're pushing the pawns, but your king is really in danger now in the next couple of moves. So after h5, queen to a5, at least Stockfish grabs 1 pawn. We have queen to e4, rook to f2, queen to d4, first a check by the fish, a new check by the rook, and now rook to f3, queen to e5, rook to d3, keeping everything glued together, everything compact. The king is protecting the knight is protecting the rook, the pawn is protecting the rook is very well placed, controls of course the third rank, controls also the d file. So far a solid setup here by Stockfish. Rook to e2, we have king to b1, queen to c5, and now knight to c4. What should you do? If you deliver a check here, no worries again. King to b2, you're trying maybe to do something, but then you get a check, then the knight is coming. You're controlling the b1 square. Look how Stockfish calculates, again, everything in a good way. You control the b1 square and you threaten also knight to f3, and there's simply no good defense against a knight to f3. So there's simply one fork is going to happen for sure. So after knight to c4, that's why rook to e1, king to a2, queen comes here on the second rank. Stockfish delivers a check, new check by the rook. Again, the queen is coming, allows here even, of course, to king maybe to escape to g3, but now again a new check, king to h4, and now knight to b2. Look how Stockfish is rerouting the pieces, improves actually the activity of the pieces, but still keeps everything glued together, everything compact here on the second rank. Queen to a7, knight to a4. No way that black is going to somehow attack the king. The king seems exposed here on a2, but the queen and rook don't find really good activities against the king here on a2. So after Queen to e7, queen to h3 check, a new check by the queen, and now Stockfish grabs another pawn. So you see again, reshifting, removing the pieces all over the board, and then you grab one pawn. That's now Stockfish here main endgame strategy. Rook to e6, rook to d5. Again, Stockfish is not trading. If the rooks are off the board, for instance, it will be then a tough time to somehow stop two connected passions. So Stockfish has to be patient here. Stockfish has to wait a chance. When maybe one of these pawns is taken, then maybe it's time to trade off more pieces. So here, queen to f6, queen to d3, queen to f2, rook to c5. Here we have h4, rook to c4, attacking the pawn g5. You see, Altair is trying to push the pawns further. Rook to c7, the huge threat. As I mentioned in the middle of this video, you're getting your pawns advanced, but your king is getting more and more attacked by white's queen and the rook. Rook to g6. Now the queen comes into the game. Rook into h5. Check. Here Altair is covering. The queen comes again in the center of the board. h3, rook to c4. We have queen to f7, queen to g4, and now check. Now Altair finally escaped, and now finally Stockfish takes. As I said, when Stockfish secured a pawn, now it's time to trade off everything. Now it's time to go, of course, into completely favorable endgame. We have king to g6, queen to g2. Now, of course, after a couple of checks, the knight comes finally into the game. g4, king to h2, king to g6. Now there is a threat of the fork. You have to play something like queen to f5, and now queen to f4. Now Stockfish is saying, I have an endgame that I can win. Queen takes f4, knight to f4. Here Stockfish is simply going with the knight here and waits now to move g3 and plays now a beautiful knight takes g3, and the game is over here for black. Here's here after move c3, Altair has to take. Stockfish goes for the pawn, is simply close enough to the action. Black cannot, of course, go somewhere, go simply behind, and Stockfish promoted the queen, and the game was over after a couple more moves. Of course, Stockfish delivered the checkmate. So, great game by the fish against the Philidor Defense. We haven't covered already so many great games in the Philidor Defense here on my YouTube chess channel, so I'm trying to be flexible. I'm trying to cover as much of this opening as we can, but sometimes it's very tough to play. You see, you have to find still great tactics, you have to still find the great strategies, best attacking ideas. You have to also defend yourself. So as I said, interesting opening for sure, but when the fish is playing that, it's of course a different story. Especially the exchange sacrifice, I think, was very spectacular. So in my opinion, again, a great game by the strongest engine in the world. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting ideas of the exchange variation of the Philidor Defense. If you want to see some other great AI chess games here on my YouTube chess channel, check out our Come to Chess Games Play by Computer series. Here's the link of the playlist, and if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best.